Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Path of the Prophets. Today we are on the road from Dhulikel to Namobuddha at the edge of the Kathmandu Valley in Nepal, in the middle hills of the Himalayas. Now this is a pilgrimage route, and so we automatically think about the spiritual path. And I wanted to discuss the role of synchronicity as it relates to the straight path and getting a sense of right guidance, the experience and expression of right guidance. So what I've noticed is that, I'm going to use this word synchronicity, which I believe it originates, and maybe it's before this, but it's from Jungian psychology, related to Carl Jung. And synchronicity, it consists of two words. It's a compound word. Chronicity, chronos, time, syn, S-Y-N, with or together, together in time, with time, kind of a time sign. And so it's kind of like where things click in place, where things flow together in a very interesting way that gives you a sense that we are in a very special world, and it gives you a sense of being on the right track. Sometimes little signs of being on the right track, that you're on the path. So it could be, from my personal experience, where I had I would be, it's like I've had a lot of intense experiences in my life, and I've suffered a lot, and I've gone through a lot of sorrow, had to work through a lot of issues, and I'm still working through issues, but I've made a lot of progress, thankfully. Alhamdulillah, I'm very thankful for this path. This is a very beautiful path. So sometimes we get stuck in heart constrictive spaces where our heart is feels more solid, where we feel more cut off from people, from nature, where we become more agitated, more angry, or where we feel off, like we're out of harmony, we're in a disharmonious state, where we're engaged in unhealthy behaviors and patterns in our thinking, in our speech, in our behavior, and things don't seem to go right, and we have days where nothing seems to click in place, nothing seems to flow correctly, and it becomes very challenging, and we begin to ask ourselves, am I doing something wrong? Am I being punished? Why is everything going wrong in my life? And I've gone through this a number of times in my life path. And then what I noticed is when I started taking responsibility for my suffering and responsibility for my happiness and seeking to be rectified, to be rightly guided and properly aligned, and to come into harmony with natural law, to be purified of unhealthy attachments to false conceptualizations of people, places, things, and ideas. And the more I would sit in silent meditation, silent contemplation of breath, body sensation, before that, actually, it was books, where I would sit and contemplate books very, very carefully, beginning with the scriptures, beginning with the biblical texts, and then later reading Rumi very prayerfully with presence and appreciation. And then he points toward the Quran, and then I started reading translations, interpretations of the Quran. At the same time, I'm reading other scriptures as I begin to study comparative religions. So I start reading The Cloud of Unknowing from the Christian contemplative tradition. I read the Bhagavad Gita, and the Ramayana from what we call the Hindu tradition, although it's much more sophisticated than that word conveys. Sorry, dealing with little traffic here in the Himalayas. And then I started reading, some of the Chinese texts, the Tao Te Ching, the Chuang Tzu, both I highly recommend, especially the Thomas Cleary translations. The first times I read any hadith from the Prophet, peace be upon him, they were from a book of prophetic wisdom translated from Thomas Cleary. And also the first time I read the words of Ali, may Allah be pleased with him, it was Living and Dying with Grace, also translated from Thomas Cleary, highly recommended. So I'm reading all these things over time, and I go deeper into prayer, fasting, contemplation, meditation. And eventually this is going to lead to deep cleansing and detoxing of the body, so I can cleanse and detox the mind and my energy fields and be purified and made whole. And this is a long process, which I'll discuss more in the future, inshallah. But the point I wanted to get across is that the more I was doing the cleansing and the detoxing, the contemplation, the meditation, the prayer, the fasting, the more I was having synchronous experiences, synchronicities, where things would come together in some very interesting ways. Some examples. Today, after praying Fajr, I'm in a bit of a meditative state, in a state of concentration, meditative concentration. A bit of what's called a samadhi state, where I'm very concentrated, very calm, very serene. And I went into the facilities, the restroom facilities, and I see a mosquito in there. And I go out of my way to avoid killing or harming any creatures, and to minimize negative contact and negative relationships with anyone, human or non-human. And for a second, I saw a mosquito and it was landed on the wall, and I thought about smacking it and killing it. For one, mosquitoes, they can carry diseases. They could be a problem. And I thought about doing that, but then I was like, that's not my way. I had second thoughts. Because typically what I do is try to catch creatures, whether it's a mosquito, a spider, a mouse, whatever. I'll catch it and release. I'll do catch and release. So I'll keep like bug containers, some kind of a container around where I can just immediately grab a cup and then a flat surface and kind of temporarily entrap the insect and then take it out. But when I came to my senses and decided not to harm this creature, I made a conscious decision. The mosquito flew over to the window. I was able to unlock it quickly, open it, and set him free. This happened with a fly, yesterday in another instance. And you might be like, these are just insects, brother. What are you talking about? What are you going on about? I've had experiences where like in my classrooms, my students know that I don't allow killing of any creatures in my space, ever. It's unacceptable, 100% of the time. If there is a bee or a wasp in there, I encourage them to be as calm as possible. If there is a mouse that's in the room, to be calm and relaxed, and I will address the situation, inshallah. And so they've seen me many times. I will, with a piece of paper, I will invite, I will send a message to the bee or the wasp, that I want to help you to get outside. And I will put a piece of paper in the air, and the vast majority of the time that wasp or that bee will land on that paper, and I will let it outside. Just set it out the window. One time I had a mouse running through the room. I regularly, like the school building I was teaching in for a while, had a big mouse issue. And of course they went in and did the poisoning and this and that, but I don't think that's the way. First, you do preventatives, and there are other ways of addressing infestations. We should always eliminate harm, and where we can't eliminate harm, we minimize harm to the greatest extent possible. So one time a mouse runs through the room, and I'm working with 13 and 14-year-olds, right? And it was crazy. All the girls are cool. They're just cool, calm, collected, because they know that I'm going to take care of it. One of the boys, and he's like this tough boy. This boy jumps up on top of the desk all scared. I'm like, what? Like, he embarrassed himself. But I went over to the trash can, and with perfect timing, the mouse jumps into the trash can. I turn it so he can't jump out. I open the door. I'm right by the door that goes to the field out back. I tell the students I'll be right back. I carry the mouse out by the football field, and I turned the trash can and let him loose, and he was free out into the field. So this is an example of things clicking in place, and by being in a calm, collected, concentrated, meditative state through systematic prayer, meditation, contemplation. Certain states, fasting can assist in this process, and there are many different ways of fasting. We'll discuss that in other videos, inshallah. But these are examples. Now, other examples might be, traveling. I do my best to stay in a meditative state, like especially traveling in South Asia. I like to do little mini retreats before and after, and to do daily practice where I can, because it can be stressful, especially in big city areas. But I've been having a lot of experiences traveling lately where I will, it's like I won't know where we're going, and then I'll get maybe some wrong information, and things will click in place. Like, just actually it was yesterday. Like I'm headed toward Dhulikel, and we don't know exactly where we're going. And we asked this guy, and he's seems a little bit shady, and he leads us to this place, and he's like, "This is where you get the bus," in his kind of broken English, and it's like, and then we were in, and it's funny because there were, it's like somebody that I'm traveling with had some doubts about this person in this situation, which is understandable. Like you have to be a bit skeptical and careful in certain situations when you're traveling for a number of reasons. And I felt like it was all going to click in place, and then just all of a sudden, boom, the bus pulls up just at that very instance, and it just all clicked in place. That's not the best example, but there are many examples where it's like the taxi will arrive, or the bus will arrive, or a person will arrive just at the right moment, or somebody will have it's like in a conversation, things will click in place, and the conversation will go in a certain direction and flow a certain direction in a beautiful way with perfect timing. It's like. So it's perfect. It's where things click in place, and you go into a flow state, and things, you come into harmony in a very interesting way, where body and mind, you harmonize with your environment, with people around you. And so it's interesting. Synchronicity is a very beautiful experience, and oftentimes we get indications we're on the right path. If you have enough synchronous experiences, because earlier in my life, I doubted if I was very insecure about things because I kept making a lot of mistakes at some key points. It's like, I thought negative things. I had been programmed to think negatively about myself, and I had wrong ideas about, religiosity, and I had a wrong-headed worldview, and the rug would get pulled out from underneath me so many times when I held when I put people on a pedestal, when I kind of idolized people and put them into too high of a place, and I had unhealthy attachments to people, unhealthy attachments to books, to ideas, to places, whatever it might be, and I had to learn hard lessons. And my whole point is that the more that I grew on the spiritual path, I started realizing that synchronicity often is a positive indicator where the guide most high, will let us know that we're on the right track. And it's kind of like a smile from Allah, where you get a little indication that you're on the right track. And what I've noticed too is these synchronicities will often arise after a very deep prayer session, after long sajda, long sujood, long sits in the darkness or in nature. So I've had these experiences many times where, I will pour my heart out and I will be asking for guidance. And then sometimes very quickly, sometimes within a few hours, sometimes within a few minutes, things will start clicking in place. I'll get a key phone call or a key email. Maybe I've been waiting for some information for weeks with nothing. And then after a very profound prayer session, where I poured my heart out on the carpet, or I sat in silence for an hour or more, then boom, something beautiful will happen, and it'll click in place with a simultaneous flowing manner. And the day will flow in a certain way, and it's like, wow, like I get little indicators that, wow, I'm doing something right with my diet, or I'm doing something right with my spiritual practice. I need to keep cultivating this and developing this. I need more of this. So I'll get little indicators, and then sometimes I will go into a situation, and if I go into a negative state, Allah will instantly give me a little smackdown, a little indicator. No, don't go that direction, and I will put a correction in place immediately, and repent of it, and then things will often flow after that, especially if I take the time out to just even do a brief observation of the breath, briefly come into my body sensations, become more embodied. So what I would argue that is synchronicity is connected to presence and appreciation. To be very present in your body, in your sensations, in your breath, to be aware, to be egoless and selfless and unattached. In what I would call a warmly non-attached practice. So you want to be in a state of appreciation, presence, mindfulness, rooted in this very moment. And the way that we become rooted in this very moment is to be as embodied as possible. Really be within your body. So many of us are kind of, especially those of us who have been traumatized, who were abused growing up, whatever, we're not completely embodied, until we go through a process of becoming embodied. And so people who have PTSD are not deeply embodied typically. And I'll discuss this in another video, inshallah. But I wanted to say that the more that you go into these deep prayer experiences, spend a lot of time in sajda and sujood, when you spend a lot of time contemplating body and breath, really focusing, observe the contraction and expansion of your chest, of your belly as you breathe. Observe your pulse points, after you've taken a vigorous walk or a run. Sit down and really just observe the pulsation. That's the breath flowing through your body in the blood and taking waste out of the blood as well. So I'm going to go ahead and draw this to a close, but let's seek to see the synchronicities, to recognize them. Some people are very, very skeptical of these things, but it's also connected to intuition. So a lot of intuition is related to synchronicity. So we'll discuss these in other videos soon, inshallah. But pay close attention to the synchronicities, observe them, and give thanks. Be in a state of gratitude when you experience them, because this is one of the indicators of letting you know that you're on the right track. And the more we come into right guidance, the more we are going to experience these things, these synchronous experiences where things click in place and flow as you begin to become more egoless and selfless and flow. And also the more we become compassionate, the same thing, we become more open and expansive and present. So until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.